This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com. Talk about what's next for Bob. And boy, this is maybe a low light. He becomes a trainer for Tough Enough Season 2, a reality TV show produced by both WWE and MTV at the time. And during his tenure as a Tough Enough trainer here in 02, he gets a reputation, at least from fans online, as being a bully. He has a tendency to work quote unquote stiff with the rookie contestants, and he actually legitimately injures some folks here. It wasn't until season 3 that he winds up beating the shit out of Matt Capitelli. And, I'm sure we'll talk about that, but you know what? Let's just do it now. What's the office's stance on Holly and Tough Enough? It's just entertainment. It's TV, pay no mind to it. Or was this a real HR type situation?
He was a TV character. That's why I got the booked. That's why I got the assignment.
Right.
It wasn't good, Conrad. I don't know if it went all the way to an HR issue. It would now, but we weren't now. We're back then. That's, many, many years ago. So, today it wouldn't pass the mustard at all.
Right.
Matter of fact, I'll make a very good mustard, by the way.
JRBBQ.com, just saying.
It wasn't good, man. It wasn't good. So I'm a big believer that sometimes karma's a bitch. Of course, the Matt Capitelli story, poor Matt battled cancer for seemingly forever. What a sweetheart of a kid. And he was very popular. And people knew that he was fighting an enemy that many of us had never even thought of, cancer. So it wasn't good. Bob got carried away, and he went over the line on some of this stuff. So, but Vince wanted a character in that show, somebody that was stirred up and a lightning rod. And with that, here comes Bob Holly, and it worked in that respect.
What's your stance like? You said it didn't become an HR thing, but had it become an HR thing in 03, would it have changed anything, do you think?
Hard to say. My sense abilities would say no, but I don't know that to be conclusive. Probably, it would have been we can't do this, correct the problem, identify the problem, solve the problem, move on. It wouldn't have been that simple, obviously, but yeah, it was an unnecessary situation, and it got Bob the wrong kind of heat with a lot of people. The bully thing was not selling well. It should never sell well. Bully, there's no place for it. There's no time in history that you say, well, let's go. Okay, if it happened before 1960 or whatever, then it's okay. It's never okay. So, and people shouldn't teach their kids to be bullies.
Right.
All you're raising is a little prick. Don't do it. Don't do that to kids, where they think they have a certain amount of machismo that makes daddy happy. When I busted my little brother's nose or something, or the neighbor. But Bob was a bully on those occasions, but I don't know that was 100% Bob's call. I think John Gabork was producing those shows at that time.
That's right.
And, and Gabork got orders from headquarters from Kevin Dunn, and who got them from Vince, because Dunn and Gabork are, have been friends for years, Baltimore friends, that, he carried out his orders. And again, people are going to say, well, that doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it right, JR. Well, I'm not saying it makes it right. I'm saying this is how it is. This is how it was. So that's kind of where I see that, Conrad. It was Bob got out of step there, and he's lucky he didn't get fired.
Do you think that, guys, you're old school, do you think there's such a thing as working too stiff, and that when you do so, you do become a bully? Or do you think that's just paying your dues and part of the business? Because it was for a long, long time.
All I'll say is that your number one priority as a pro wrestler is to protect your opponent.
Yes, sir.
And not allow that individual to be hurt at your hands. And I don't know. It's just not a good way to go. I mean, I worked for Bill Watts, for God's sakes. Sometimes he would have workouts with fans who wanted to get in the wrestling business, and he'd bring somebody in like Dr. Death, who would absolutely maul them like a grizzly bear. This after everybody left the arena, and they'd sign their waivers because they were going to get hurt. And Bill would watch Doc maul this guy, wear him out, and then Cowboy would get in the ring and finish it.
Right.
Cowboy always went over in those shoots because he had Doc to
beat him up.
Yeah. The cross faces would make you cringe. Make you just want to leave the room. But it's a different world.
Yeah,
you can't do that anymore.
Right.
And so a lot of things we talk about on the show at the time that they happened,
in that context, yeah,
they were more politically correct or tolerable than not. And now it's a different era and things have changed immensely. I think for the better, quite frankly. We don't need to have bullies, people getting slapped around, bleeding out of their ears and chipping teeth and all that stuff. To prove how tough you are. That went away a long time ago.
Let's circle back to something you said a minute ago. You referenced karma. I can't help but wonder, what does that mean?
Well, what goes around comes around. Sometimes, your forays into something don't work. After a while, you run out of luck. Timing's bad, or a lot of those things. But karma to me is, if you plant bad long enough, you're going to grow bad. If you plant positive to a sales staff or people you work with or your significant other, whatever the case may be, or pardon me, if you plant good, you're more apt to grow good. And I'm a big person on, I want to grow positive. I try to teach that message to my kids and my grandchildren. You're going to reap what you sow more often than not. It may sound old cliche, but think about it. And so anyway, the karma is it's the imaginary, invisible, tasteless, odorless thing that can either serve you well, or depending on your mindset and what you're doing, can be a pain in the ass.
In the context of this conversation, though, you think it's karma that Bob beat up Matt and now Bob's not in wrestling? Is that what you were driving at?
No.
Okay.
I don't think that Bob beating up Matt took Bob out of the wrestling business. It was not a highlight on his career.
Right.
Obviously, but I don't think it was the bullet to the head. That wasn't the kill shot, in my opinion. Maybe it should have been. I don't know. And if it happened today, we know what the result would be.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You'd be future endeavored.
Yeah.
So, but that wasn't, we're talking almost 20 years ago.
Bob's not on the WrestleMania 2002 card, WrestleMania 18. Let's talk about when Bob comes back from this. He's in the 2006 Royal Rumble. Daniel Puter's also in there, unfortunately. And, Holly, Eddie Guerrero, and Chris Benoit light him on fucking fire. It is Chop City. Daniel Puter even did some shoot interviews where he said he felt like he was taken advantage of. Quote, Bob's chops are notorious for hurting like hell. Up until that point, I could only speculate. 2 minutes later, I was on the receiving end of about a dozen of Bob's finest, and I could confirm that they do indeed hurt like hell. My chest, which was now bleeding, seconded the opinion. The crowd popped for each chop with an increasing fervor, but by the last, they were wincing in pain along with me. Pretty rough moment. What do you remember of this Royal Rumble situation? This is yet another example of where folks could point to and say, damn it, Bob Holly was a bully.
Well, and so was Eddie Guerrero, and so was Chris Benoit.
Right.
They did the same thing. It was almost like an indoctrination, a rite of passage. We're expected to do, us veterans are expected to do things like this to find out how tough this shooter really is. And so if Daniel Puder thought that they took advantage of him, I'd say he was right.
Any sort of pushback from the office on this? Does anybody even address it? Or is it just one of those things where that's part of the business, kid?
Well, the physicality, you're getting chopped on the pecs. It's not like you're going to go to the hospital over it. It's painful, stings, hurts. Is it debilitating? Not really. But it's very impressive in the ring, especially when you get noise and the crowd reaction. So I don't remember anybody getting any. I mean, it probably was addressed, but more than likely in that era, it was addressed in a way that you're kind of laughing about it. You guys really gave that kid an eye-opening experience. As far as it went, what are you going to say? What are you going to do? Don't do that again. You're an adult. You're a professional. I'd like for you not to do that again. It goes against time immemorial of how talents were broken in, especially with talents that had a real tough guy reputation. How tough are they? And so those three guys, Benoit and Eddie and Bob, decided to find out just how tough this kid was. So I'm sure it was a lot of inside jokes. What are you guys going to do? I'm sure that the offenders were motivated to make their point perfectly clear, but couldn't do that today. Couldn't do it today at all. Talents wouldn't stand for it. They're not some of the talents. I heard Undertaker thing. He said the other day that a lot of talents weren't as tough as they used to be. I agree with that. Because they're trained differently. They're brought into the business differently. They're not sitting in a car. They're not making $25 or $40 a night. It's just a different ball game. So, but I do think Taker's got a good point there. So today's wrestler getting chopped unmercifully to where your blood is rushing to the surface and your bruising is already in effect, probably would not happen in today's world. Well, because the offending person wouldn't stand for it.
I know. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.